Three, two, one, boom, we're rolling. Ryan Michler, man, I appreciate you coming on.
What's up, brother? Good to see you. Glad we can make this work. I think we've been trying to make it work for maybe a month or longer now, but that's on me, not on you. So
No, the good ones are always a little bit back and forth, so I love it, man.
I don't know if I'm a good one or not, but I am back and forth. That's for sure. We got that part down, anyways. Let's see if the good happens at some point down the road.
I think it will, man. No, I really appreciate you wanting to hop on. I know there's a ton of podcasts. You probably get asked a ton. Do you do a lot of interviews apart from your own show?
I don't do a lot. I do get asked a lot. But yeah, I don't do a lot. I just keep my head down and do my work. And I think there's probably a strategy to maybe jumping on more podcasts, but I enjoy interviewing people. I stay pretty busy with the work that we're doing. And so that doing other podcasts at times takes a backseat to that.
Yeah. Have you seen yourself improve? How long have you been doing your show? It's been years and years, correct?
Yeah, almost 9 years now, which is just insane to think about. In the spring,
You,
it'll be 9 years. We've got 1,100 plus podcast episodes that I've done at this
oh my
point. It's
gosh.
crazy. Yeah.
Have you
So
ever
if you're
gone
asking
back
if
and
I've
listened to some old
improved,
ones?
yeah, for sure.
Have you gone
No,
back and listened to
no,
some old ones? No.
no, no. It's up. It's still up there. I leave everything up. I still have my first YouTube video that I did in 2015, and I've seen it, and I just look ridiculous. The camera's bad, and I mean, it is what it is. But I'm not pulling it down. That's a little testament to how far you can come if you're willing to put forth the effort and work. And no, I don't go back and listen, but occasionally I do have people who find the podcast and they'll message me and say, "Hey, I found the podcast 6 months ago, and I started from episode one, and I've listened to every
Wow.
single episode since." I don't know if I could do that for anybody, let alone for me. I mean, I know. So, but it's exciting though. I was on a trip with my oldest son this last weekend. We went on a quick hunting trip, and I got stopped a couple of times in the airport because people recognized me, or they saw my hat and started talking. They're like, "Oh, do you do that podcast?" And it's flattering, it's exciting. And these guys, one guy in this year alone has lost 80 pounds, and he started lifting weights with his daughter, and she's getting fit and strong. And he said a lot of that had to do with the message that he'd been hearing on our podcast. So it's flattering. It's humbling. It's exciting to know that the work that we're doing is actually making a real difference in real people's lives.
It's just one of the coolest things, isn't it? I had a guy bump into me at a restaurant with my dad, and he's like, "Hey, are you Tyler?" And I was like, "Yeah, who the heck are you? Am I about to get jumped?" He's like, "I listen to your show, man. I follow you online." I was like, "This is so wild. Like, I'm just, you know how it is. You feel like you're just a guy. Like, we're all just guys, man. We're all just humans living in this big world. And for somebody to come up to you that you don't know from Adam, it's extremely humbling, and it just makes it all worth it because you feel like your message is really hitting home with folks."
Yeah, that's why we do this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
look, there's certainly the ego side of it, and you do get propped up, or you see somebody and it's flattering
Sure.
and it feels good. But ultimately, if you strip all that other stuff away, the real goal is to help other people. I know that's what you're doing, and that's what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah, no, but again, man, I appreciate it. Well, I've been following you now for I think a year or two, and like right off the
Mhm.
bat, like you're just so honest about your life and your message. Why do you choose to do that? And obviously to help people, but where did that come from? Because in a world of social media, man, you can throw all the highlights you want out there, and people just think, "Oh man, Ryan's life is great." You don't have to show them any negative aspects of your life, but you choose to do that. Why?
I like that question. I don't know if it's really a choice for me as much as it is this is just who I am. I will tell you
Yeah,
that as I begin to open up, and I have more even recently with some of my own personal struggles with alcohol abuse, and ultimately my divorce. That abuse led to that divorce. Uh, it was hard to share that because I had built the movement around being a good man and being disciplined and being committed and being the leader of your home. And those are things that I wasn't really doing to the degree that I should have. In some aspects, sure, but not to the degree that I should have. Uh, and I was actually really nervous about opening up about that. I thought, oh man, this is the end of the organization. And what I realized as I began to share my own personal struggles and got more real with people, I had I had thousands of messages from people who had said, "Hey, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's unfortunate. But I feel your situation. I'm dealing with alcohol abuse. I'm dealing with drug abuse. I'm dealing with a pornography addiction. I'm dealing with a divorce. I'm dealing with a separation." And they began to open up and share with me what they were dealing with. And what I realized through this whole, I would say, year and a half or so now, is the more genuine that we can be with people about our own struggles and shortcomings, the more that you give men permission. And they don't need it, but they feel like they do, but you give them permission to be able to share the same. And we can't really improve until we're willing to take a good hard look at our own inadequacies and where we're struggling personally. Once we are able to look at that, then we actually give ourselves the foundation for growth. But most of us are so willing to pull the, and myself included, so willing to pull the wool over our eyes for forever, maybe even your entire life, and not really willing to take a good hard look at who you are and where your shortcomings are and how you could actually do better if you're willing to address them honestly. So I'm not sure it was a deliberate move, but now that I see how powerful it can be in the lives of other people, it's very intentional that I tell people. I got a question the other day about, because we do an Ask Me Anything once per week on the podcast where listeners can ask questions on whatever topic they want. And one of the questions had to do with leading yourself, or excuse me, leading your family from a spiritual perspective. I'm not great at that. There's a lot of room for improvement in that aspect of life for me. And so I could bullshit him and say, here's the 5 things you should do to lead your family spiritually. I don't know what they are, or I don't know how to implement them. And I'm going to be honest about that. And I've made a commitment specifically over the past year and a half just to be truthful about, hey, I don't know. Man, if you guys have ideas, let me know because I need them just as much, if not more, than you do.
Yeah. And I think by being open, it resonates with a lot of people because everybody has something they're going through. Everybody has skeletons in the closets or secrets or demons that a lot of times they don't deal with in the appropriate manner. And something that I've seen as I get older is that men don't talk as much as they should to each other about what's going on. They just bottle up these feelings. And when they you maybe listen to a podcast on your end or maybe my show or any show, there's tons of shows out there. I think it's a great way to open up those means of communications because if they're like, oh, wow, Ryan's talking about it or Tyler's talking about it or Rogan had this guy on and he's talking about it, it makes them feel more like it's more accepted to talk about feelings. And why do you think that men don't do that as much as they should? At least I personally don't think that men talk as much as they should.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it comes down to there's a lack of environment to be able to do that. That's number one. We'll discuss that in a second here. And number two is society has conditioned men to believe that the way that we connect with each other is the same way a woman might connect with a woman. And we know, so even subconsciously, that's repulsive to us. This is the reason that you see, for example, dwindling church attendance among men. We don't want to be preached at. We don't want to sit there and face this pastor who's telling us all the things that we're doing wrong and how we could be doing better and all these wonderful things. It's been shown that women connect, if you look at it physiologically, that women connect face to face. So they'll look at each other and they'll connect. They'll talk, they'll discuss, maybe even gossip. They'll do all sorts of things, but they'll be looking at each other physically. It's interesting. But the way that men connect is we connect instead of looking at each other, we connect this way, shoulder to shoulder. So if I sit here and I look at you, that's more of a feminine approach. I'm generalizing, but that's more of a feminine approach to connection. Men connect this way, shoulder to shoulder. So what we're doing is we're united in defending ourselves or people, the things that are important to us, or towards a common objective. And this is why, for example, you'll see football teammates who have gone through high school, maybe college together, and then even get into the pros and they'll play on different teams. And you can see that brotherhood that's forged because they're quite literally not turned like this, but turned outwards towards their opponent. It's the
Yes.
same reason that you see in battle men that go through horrific circumstances and situations. They're not facing towards each other, front towards enemy, right? They're faced
Yeah.
outwards and they're shoulder to shoulder. If this guy goes down, this guy steps up. If this guy goes down, this guy steps up. And they know that they have each other's back. So those are the two reasons that men don't connect. Number one, the environments available have dwindled or are not taken advantage of. And number two, society has conditioned us to believe that we are supposed to connect like women. Oh, why can't you just be kinder towards each other? Oh, I can't believe you said that to Bill. Like, that was so mean. They don't get it. They don't understand how men connect. You know, I went on a couple of hunts in the last 30 days or so. And like some of the things that were said to me, like if you saw it in any other context, could be like some of the most harshest things you'd ever hear. But in context, we're all giving each other shit. We're all giving each other a hard time, and we're actually forging bonds that way. So if you look at society, to go back to point number, whoops, dropped my water bottle. Fortunately, I
All
drank all my
good.
water already. It was empty. If you look back to point number one with the opportunities environments to connect, most of the societal institutions that we had as men have all been stripped away. I mean, church attendance, you look at different organizations within the community, opportunities to serve. Man, even just men. I get together with my neighbors. They're literally 200 yards that way. He's got an indoor pickleball court every single Monday morning. I go play with him and three other guys.
Yeah.
Guys don't do that anymore. Look, I don't need to sit and hold your hand and sing kumbaya with you. I'm actually not interested in that. But can we go play pickleball together and ask how the kids are doing or ask what we're dealing with? You bet. And we should be doing those things in a masculine way. And it's just not provided to us. It's not available. And most importantly, we just don't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I'm listening to
That
you. I'm going to
lack of
grab that water bottle
environment.
while I'm listening.
You're good. Remote podcasting, man. You gotta love it. Um, in terms of the lack of environment, is that's had to been something that's been on your heart for a while? Is that kind of where the idea of the Iron Council came from, or you're just trying, like you just said, screw it, I'm gonna give these men an environment to do these types of things?
Yeah, look, I wish I could tell you I was more deliberate than I was. When I started Order of Man in 2015, I didn't really I wanted to improve personally as a father, a husband, leader in my community, guys trying to run a successful financial planning practice. But I would look around and I just didn't have anybody around me that I felt could help me on that path. They're, you know, my friends were good friends for sure, but I didn't really feel like they were interested in self development. And so I had to create it for myself. And that's what I did. That's why I started Order of Man, so I could talk with interesting and unique people, get their insights, and then apply it in my own life. And I just thought, well, I just broadcast this. It's one-on-one coaching, but I might as well just broadcast this. So I broadcast it, and it took off really quickly, faster than I thought it would have. And I got about 7 or 8 months into it, and my then wife at the time asked me. She said, I love that you're doing this Order of Man thing, but you're not doing your financial planning practice as much, and it's taking away from family household income." And that was true. And she said, you either ought to find a way to maybe make some money doing this or not do it as much. And at that point, I was all in. I'm like, well, I'm not scaling back. If anything, I'm going to double down on this. And I had listened to a podcast. I can't remember which one, but the guy said, "Oh, start a course." I'm like, okay, I don't know any better, so I'll start a course. So I put together a 12-week course. We called it the Iron Council. I charged $100. I said I got 12 spots, and I sold out almost instantaneously. And that was the first $1,200 that I made doing this business, and realized, oh, you can actually make money doing this. This isn't just something that I can do as a hobby. I can actually make money. I didn't think I could make much money, but some to supplement what I was taking away from my financial planning practice. And yeah, so to your point, we started the Iron Council. We got about 9 weeks into the 12-week program, and the guys are saying, "Hey, what do we do after this?" I'm like, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. And at that point, we opened up the Iron Council on a more permanent basis. And now we have, 1,200 members all across the country, and men serving and helping each other. Tens of thousands of men have gone through our programs. It's wild.
It's really, really awesome, man. And that's something I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper with you was entrepreneurship. And I always ask guys who've started companies and just entrepreneurs that I look up to. Like I know you just interviewed Bert. You guys are
Mm.
good friends, and I had him on a month or two ago, and I peppered him as well. Just any advice or just trials and tribulations through entrepreneurship, man, because I'm going through it too. I'm figuring it out as I go too, and There's so many unique challenges to it. And like I quit my 9 to 5 job and I work more now than I would have ever done going to my 9 to 5 job. But it's rewarding work because you're trying to build something, you're trying to build a community. What's that process been like for you, man? Like you've been podcasting for almost a decade and you've started all these like Iron Council and just your merch and just everything. Like what have been some trials and tribulations that you've had and how'd you get through those?
Yeah, I look at the business as a process, and life in general as a process of experimentation. So if I have an idea or a thought, I really feel like I owe it to myself and to my creator, to get back to that spiritual conversation, to implement it. That idea didn't come just randomly pop into my head out of nowhere. It's a lot like the concept of energy. I was teaching my kids, because we homeschool our kids, and I was teaching them science last year, and I didn't know this, but energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. And that was kind of, I'm like, wait, it can't be created? No, it can just be transferred for something else. You have static and kinetic energy. It's just transferred and then put into action. And I think that's true about even our business. When I have an idea, that didn't come from nowhere. Like, it came from somewhere. It was transferred from somewhere. Where did it come from? Was it divine inspiration, or did I listen to a particular podcast and that gave me the insight or the idea? But I think I owe it to myself, and wherever that idea came from, I believe is divinity, to implement it, to try it. And that's what I've done. I remember when we ran our very first event, I woke up one night and I'm like, oh, in the middle of the night, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we ran an event and we had like 20 guys come, and I don't even know what we do or where it would be, but man, it would be cool. We'd all get together, we'd do some guy stuff. And so I wrote it down. I had a little notepad by my nightstand, and I wrote it down. And the next morning I woke up and I started looking and researching venues that we'd be able to do it. And I found this really cool venue that's about 45 minutes away from where I live. And it's up in the mountains. It's tucked in the mountains. It's a lodge, and they'll hold, I think, up to 40 guys. I'm like, oh, this could be perfect. So I reach out to the venue and I say, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's the dates. And they say, great. Those dates are free. Here's the deposit amount. And I put down a deposit without even knowing how I was going to sell this thing out, like how I was going to promote it. I didn't even know what exactly we were going to do. And I said, great, here's my deposit. Well, I put the deposit down and I tried to market it, and I literally had 0 people sign up, not a single person. And we're about 3 weeks out from our event. I call the venue up. I'm like, hey, look, I don't have anybody signed up. And the guy's like, not one? I'm like, no, no one, literally no one. And he's like, oh, that sucks. Well, you're going to lose your deposit. and I said, well, hold on. Work with me a little bit. I said, what if I bump this back 3 or 4 months, and you took my deposit and you applied it towards the payment in 3 to 4 months? He's like, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. He's like, just so you know, that's in season though, so the price is a little bit higher, but I'd be willing to take your deposit and apply it towards that. I said, okay, cool. So he was great about it. He didn't have to do that, but he did. And I went back to the drawing board, and I figured out how to market this thing a little better. And I ended up selling the 20 spots that we had available. And we call ourselves, still to this day, the Terrible 20. There's about 5 of them that I keep in contact with. And this was 8 years ago. These guys are close personal friends. For me, it's a process of experimentation. If I have an idea, I remember one time I thought, oh, here's a cool idea for a shirt. And I paid a designer to design this shirt for us. And it was a lighthouse. And I can't even remember exactly what it said, but it was a lighthouse. Man, what did it say? Oh, it said stay the course. It was a lighthouse and it said stay the course. So I make this design and I put this out there, and I buy, 300 shirts or whatever I buy, and pay the designer and get it on my website, and I publish it. And an organization, a company called Stay the Course, reaches out and says, hey, bro, like, you need to take this down or we're going to, sue you. And
Yep.
I I reached out back out to the guy. I'm like, look, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Like, that's ignorance on my part, but yeah, I'll take it down. I think I sold 5 shirts or something before I took it down. And I've got literally hundreds of shirts sitting in my garage, not now, but did at the time, sitting in my garage that I couldn't sell. So I've got a bunch of expensive rags, really, is what it is. And I think I donated them to Goodwill or something, Salvation Army or something. Um, but yeah, that was expensive. It cost me a couple grand. Realized, well, you better be aware of the merchandise you're putting out. Is it really yours or is it somebody else's? So there's a lot of lessons that I learned, but I roll with the punches and realize that it's just a process of experimentation. And even in the losses, sometimes people will take losses so seriously and they think it'll
Mm-hmm.
cripple them and they'll stop doing what they need to do. But I have a good friend. His name is Pete Roberts. He's the founder of Origin USA. He's a partner with Jocko,
Mm-hmm.
and I've invested in the company personally because I believe in what they're doing. And he calls it tuition payment. It's just a tuition payment. Like nobody bats an eye if they spend $100,000 on a law degree to learn whatever they need to learn in order to be a practicing attorney. But if you go do that in business, people will call you a moron. People will call you an idiot. They'll call you a loser. They'll call you a failure. You'll even quit yourself because you lost 5 grand. Tuition payment.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not telling you that we're going to go out and deliberately pay these extra tuitions, but that $2,000 was a tuition payment that I've paid that nobody else has paid. So they don't get the benefit of what I know. So if you look at it that way and realize that even in your losses, that the payments that you're making are part of the deal. It's part of the investment. And I've bought camera equipment that doesn't work and then had to upgrade. I've got thousands of dollars worth of camera and microphones and technology sitting in that closet right there that I can never use and I never will use. Maybe I can sell it, maybe not, I don't know, but it's tuition payment. And I'm willing to pay it because I know that the return is going to be so much greater than the initial investment I had to make.
Yeah, and that goes to something you put online not too long ago is that everything in life is how you frame it. You
Yeah.
can't take all you can't win every single time. The quote unquote losses I think are way more valuable than some of the wins.
They can be if you're willing to look at it that way. I mean, you're
Yes.
exactly right with the framing. I've been through some hard shit in my life, just like anybody else, and I'm not here to compare my trials and tribulations to yours. Everybody has their own thing, like you said earlier. But even my divorce, like the think about that. I mean that's a one thing. My divorce and being a husband and being a father and being a family man, that was more important to me than anything else in the world. At least that's what I told myself. I didn't always act that way, but I told myself that. And that's gone, never coming back in the way that it did. And so, what do I do? Do I throw in the towel and do I consider myself a loser and a failure and life's never going to get better? I'll tell you what, the relationship I have with my kids today, a year and a half later, is probably stronger than it's ever been in the history of me being their father. Would that have happened if I would have stayed the same course? Probably not. So it's a blessing in disguise. It's hard. It's really, really hard to realize it in the moment. But if you frame it correctly, and that's just a choice that you make, is life
Yeah.
happening to me or is it happening for me? And I believe not just life, but I believe our creator is conspiring in our favor. He's working on our behalf, even in the points of despair and loneliness and depression and heartbreak and heartache and headache. He's working on our behalf.
Yeah. As a guy who I see is always trying to level up and better themselves, how do you deal with self-doubt? Like when you were starting the company and even today, I'm sure there's times where you're like, "Man, Ryan, you don't have it all figured out, man. What are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, how do you deal with those doubts that you personally have? And then I don't know what it's like. I don't know what your comment section looks like nowadays, but I'm sure when you started this whole thing, there was a lot of people that didn't believe in you. Ryan, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money. You're not gonna make it. Nobody's gonna support you. How do you deal with things like that?
I don't deal with things like that from the outside. I don't care what somebody else says. If somebody else, oh, well, let me change that. I care about what some people say.
Yeah.
So if somebody I care about who's qualified or somebody who I know loves me and cares about me has some constructive criticism or feedback for me, I care about that. I want to know. Like if guys in the Iron Council are like, hey, Rye, this is the thing we don't like, and here's what we do. I actually want to know about that.
Yeah.
The zero F's mentality that we hear about of like, I don't care what anybody else thinks and they can F off. No, I do care about what some people think. I actually care about what my kids think of me. So this morning, if I decide, should I go to the gym or not? No, I should go to the gym. Not only because it's good for me, but because my kids are watching. And I want them to think highly of their father. Objectively, I want them to think highly of their father because I want them to be able to have a model for success in life. So I really do care about what some people think. And I have zero care in the world for what others think. I don't care. I get messages like this every day, and this might just take time and exposure. The more you're exposed to something, it's desensitization, right? The more you're exposed to something, the less intimidating it is. If you have a fear of spiders, for example, then the whole idea is exposure to spiders. And then eventually that fear is dissipated because you're intelligent about it, you have information about it, and you've been exposed to it. And the same is true of hostility and hate and animosity online. I've heard everything in the book. People have called me all sorts of names and done all sorts of things, and it just has no relevancy anymore. Somebody calls me an asshole. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I am. I definitely can be. Like, you're right. Like, it just doesn't have any relevancy in my life. And I think the other part of it is just being honest as well. For example, when somebody says, hey, Rye, you're an asshole, it's like, yeah, I know. I'm trying to get better. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. That's the reality. I know I am. I know I'm stubborn. I know I'm hard headed. I know I can be a dick at times. I know I can let ego get the better of me. When you said you don't have it all figured out, yeah, right. I know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to hide or pretend that I do. I don't. So when someone says, oh, you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, I know. Can anybody help me? Because I'm trying to figure this thing out. If somebody says, oh, you're overweight or you could lose 10 pounds. Right. Yeah, I'm working on it. That's right. I do need to work on that. Or, oh man, like that's not good. You shouldn't do that with your kid. You need to be a better father. I know I do. Like, I wake up, I pray every night about that. Like, help me be a better father. I wake up thinking about how I can be more engaged with my kids and connect with them on a deeper level. I know you're not wrong. I know I'm open. I'm receptive. Help me, teach me. That's what this is all about. I think
That's
so. One
Go
thing I
ahead,
hear a
Ryan.
lot is
Sorry.
like this idea. No, it's good. I hear this idea of imposter syndrome where guys are like, oh, I have imposter syndrome. That's bullshit. That's because you're placing yourself on too high of a pedestal. You think too highly of yourself. You should be what? You should know things you don't know. You should perform in a way that you've never performed before. You should do things that you've never learned before. How would you do that? Yeah, this is one of the things I get frustrated, especially with men and society in general, is society generally will mock a man for not knowing something he quote unquote should know. And then when he goes out and he asks for help, they'll mock him for asking for help. It's like, what's a guy to do?
Mm-hmm.
So what does he do? This goes to your question earlier. Clams up, pulls up, shells up, shuts up, and doesn't share any of his own inadequacies and shortcomings. If, on the other hand, you said, hey, you know what? I don't know how to change the oil in my truck to your neighbor, and your neighbor blasted you and called you a moron and a fool and made you feel like an idiot, you're like, oh, okay. And then you're just going to keep taking it to Jiffy Lube.
Yeah.
But if he says, oh, cool, no problem. I grew up doing this stuff. Let me show you. Bring it over Saturday morning. We'll change the oil. Or I'll come over to you and we'll change the oil. And that neighbor brought his oil pan over and brought his tools over and walked you through it and helped you do it. Now you know how to change the oil in your truck. Like, you're not expected, I don't think, you're not expected to know things you don't know.
Yes.
And if you have an opportunity to serve somebody and help and teach and guide and instruct and coach and mentor, just don't. The guy doesn't know. Like, he's never been exposed to it. So just teach him. I had a good friend, Colin Cottrell. He called me up, and I didn't really know him at the time very well. He's like, hey, Ryan, I want to take you on a hunt. I'm like, I've never been hunting before. He's like, yeah, that's why I want to take you. And I said, well, what do I need? He's like, well, it's a bow, it's a rifle and a bow hunt. You need a bow and a rifle. I'm like, well, I don't have any of those things. He's like, go buy them. So that's what I did. I went to the local archery shop, got myself a bow. I went down to where I don't even know where I got my first rifle, but I got that first rifle, that first hunting rifle. I'd been exposed to guns, but I'd never had a hunting rifle. And I went out there and I sat with Colin. when I shot my very first deer, and he walked me through it. He's like, all right, there's the deer. Here's what you're doing. Okay, you ready? Good. Okay, here's where you want to shoot it. He never made fun of me. He never said, you're an idiot because you don't know how to hunt. He said, let's do it. I'll teach you. And he taught me. And I think that's what men do. They don't berate and put each other down. We lift each other up and we edify each other and we help each other become better. Because look, I want my neighbor to be able to change the oil on the car. Not only that, but I want him to be capable. He's my neighbor. If shit goes down, I need to know I can rely on that guy. I need to know he's
Yeah.
resourceful. I need to know he has a skill set, he's capable, and he trusts me. That's important. And we have a relationship. That's important. It's just better.
You hit it right on the head. You don't know what you don't know, and it's okay not to know, but you need to
It
ask. Like
is.
I think people are embarrassed that they don't know something, so then they just call it a day. How are you supposed to learn anything if you don't ask questions? Like I moved out to Montana from Nashville. I'm originally from Michigan, and I'm trying to like be a Western hunter. Dude, like I'm sure you've been out here and have dabbled a little bit. It's a totally different game. Like I don't know how to kill
Yeah.
an elk with my bow. I'm not sitting in a tree stand anymore. And I got
Right.
all these people like, all these Western hunters that follow me, and I'm very transparent on the internet and in general, man. Like I am exactly who you see right now. It's just I'm not afraid to ask the quote unquote dumb questions because I want to learn. I want to get better. And then when I figure out how to do it, I want to be the guy that can help the new Western hunter because I was once the FNG. So it's just one of those things, man. Like you just hit it right on the head. And it's so important. Like if you don't know, figure out a way to get the answer. And if somebody judges you for that, that's somebody that I don't want in my circle, period.
It's a good litmus test, isn't it? Like I was at the gym last week.
Yes.
Was it last week? Last week or the week before. And I'm trying to improve my bench press. And there's this guy at the gym. I've seen him. Like we nod at each other because I've seen him for months training or whatever. And
Hmm.
he's fit. He's strong. He looks good. And I'm trying to improve my bench press. And he was happened to be kind of in the same vicinity. And I said, hey man, like we don't know each other. I'm Ryan. Cool, good to meet you. Whatever. I said, I'm really trying to improve my bench. Like you actually look like you're fit and strong and have been doing this for a while. Any pointers? And he's like, oh yeah. And he gave me a few pointers on grip and technique and where to put my feet and how to push through the floor and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't know that stuff. He wasn't weird about it. In fact, he was flattered. He was like, "Oh, cool! Like I
Hmm.
get to explain some of my expertise, my knowledge." So
Hmm.
not only did it serve me because I learned some new technique that'll help me improve my performance, but it served him because now he has an opportunity to serve somebody else, and I provided that by opening my mouth. I've never had anybody. I don't know if that's true necessarily, but I would say 90% of the time, uh, when I ask for help, people they're jumping at it. The right people are jumping at that opportunity to serve others.
Because what good is all the knowledge that that individual might have if they just keep it to themselves? That's why you and I have created these platforms where, we both know a couple things about a few things, right? And if we just keep them bottled up and we don't tell nobody, what good is all the learning that we're doing? Like we can't do it all ourselves. We need to help people. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like I try to tell folks that are maybe overweight or, the biggest thing with people that don't start their fitness journey that I've seen is that they're frightened to go to the gym because they might not look like, the guy that was bench pressing however much he was bench pressing when you asked him. Obviously, you asked him because he probably had good form, he looked fit. But people that are overweight or not in shape, I think they are nervous that those in shape people are going to be like, oh, wow, look at that fat person over there. No, no, I automatically respect people that might be overweight or inexperienced that have the courage to go to the gym. And if they were to come up to me, shoot, I'll train you on the spot. I think that's amazing because one, you have the courage to come to the gym, and two, you have the courage to ask for help by somebody that you think knows more about a certain subject than you.
Yeah, and look, a lot of those fit people, everybody's like, "Oh, well, he just has good genes." That was the fat kid in 5th grade.
Absolutely.
And he got bullied and he got picked on. And so instead of crying and wallowing in his own self pity, at some point somebody said the right thing to him or he heard the right message and he decided to go to the gym for the first time, just like that guy in the airport. And he lost 80 pounds. That guy in the airport, he does fitness training for people. He wouldn't have done that a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So those fit guys, they don't have good genes. I mean, some of them, sure, they have the blessing of good genes, but it's more than that. It's that they probably were you at some point, and they decided not to be through their actions. So they get it. They know what it's like. I know what it's like to go in the gym and be 50 pounds overweight. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I have the picture still. I keep the picture. I look pathetic. I look horrible, but I don't look like that anymore. And that represents your growth. That represents the journey. And all those people that you're intimidated by, you know, if you're like, if you're thinking, oh, I'd like to have a podcast like you and I do, we'll help you. Just reach out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I'll help. If you have a question about podcast equipment or how to reach out to us, of course, because I know what it's like to start a podcast and nobody gives you the time of day. I've been there. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I really appreciate you coming on, because I knew that, you had once started a podcast and you didn't get to where you are by not shooting for the stars. You got to approach people that have been there, done that. Like, to me, you're like an OG in the podcast game, man. Like 1,000+ episodes. That's just unbelievable. And I appreciate you trying to help me by coming onto my platform and sharing your story and your message. So it's
Of
just one
course.
of those things that people, I think, have to get over, and they're never going to improve if they don't face those fears and those little demons in their mind that are like, oh, well, I mean, the worst thing that could have happened is I DM you and you don't read it, or you read it and say, hey, man, I'm really busy. Sorry. Okay. At least I tried, right? Like, I'll pitch
Yeah.
anybody to come on the show. I mean, you know how many times people tell me no to come on the show? Hundreds.
All
But
the
that just
time.
keeps me going, right? It just keeps me
Yeah.
going, wants me to just keep going and asking more people, more guests. And it's just, it'll come together, man. It always does for some. Transitioning here, Ryan, you made a post, and yeah, I've been stalking you for a little while, trying to formulate some questions for an interview. I'm sure you know that game.
All
Um,
good.
but you touched on something a week or two ago, and you thought, you thought that you kind of had your shit figured out, and then you were brought back down to a reality. You had a really rough week. You hit a deer with your car. You had a panic attack. Just when you figured you had your shit figured out, you got brought back down to reality. Why do you think that is, and how do you get back up and rolling again?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, why is that? There's a lot of different hitting a deer. I mean, is that something I did to deserve that? No, it's just part of life, right? Having a panic attack, I don't think I deserved it necessarily, but was it an indicator that something was off in my life? Yeah, you bet your butt it was. Like, there was something that needed to be addressed, and that was a great way for me to acknowledge that it was time to actually look at some things that I'd been unwilling to look at in the past. So, yeah, sometimes life happens because we deserve it, and we're just reaping the benefit or the curse of our actions. And other times it's like, no, this is just the hand you're dealt, and so you got to deal with it. Um, so the second part of your question is how do you deal with it? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because you're riding this high, right? You're riding this high. You're like, man, like I'm getting all these wins right now. I'm stacking wins. I'm stacking win momentum. Things are going in my way. Things are going my way. I'm making money. I'm being successful. My message is getting heard. And then boom, panic attack. How do you get over
Yeah.
that? How do you keep pushing forward?
Well, I think the first thing you can do. So as a former financial advisor, that's a little bit of my background. Uh, we would help people with their investment portfolios as a part of what we did. And one strategy that we always employed is that we would rebalance their portfolio quarterly. So every quarter we'd have an investment strategy, a percentage of money that would be dedicated to certain assets versus others. And then over the course of a quarter, some of those assets would perform better than others. And I'll tie this all in. I promise that there's a
No,
message behind
I
this.
have a feeling I know where you're going with it. Go ahead.
So what would happen is that when we would have wins, things that were doing well. So a certain percentage, for example, of our portfolio performed. Most people, if they don't really know too much about investments, would say, well, what do you do in that moment? Well, you just put all your money there. No, wrong answer. You actually sell it. When you do well on something, you sell that element of it. And where do you invest? In the things that didn't do so well. It's counterintuitive. Well,
Yes.
that didn't do so well, so it's a little bit behind. So we're going to put our money there because we're going to buy it on a discount. And so every quarter, we're rebalancing and getting these people back into balance where their portfolio should be based on their current investment objectives. Well, the same is true when it comes to what we're doing. And I'm not talking about like investing in loser strategies. That's not what I'm talking about. Because there are certain things that are just never going to work. And I don't want you to pour extra money into it. But what I am telling you is that you want to manage your emotion. You want to manage your emotion. So a lot of people, when they're riding the high, they're like, I'm untouchable. I'm invincible. I'm Superman. I can do anything and everything will work out in my favor. That's a recipe for disaster. You need to temper that. You need to sell some of that off. Hey, you know what? Maybe the reason I did so well is because this happened to be a good economy. It isn't. I'm just using that as an example, but happens to be a good economy. Or maybe my marketing was just on point this time. But a little bit of humility goes a long ways. And when you're feeling down, alternatively, invest in that a little bit. Hey, look, yeah, you got beat up. That thing didn't work out. You paid more for your merchandise than you should have, or nobody signed up for your event. What are you going to do now? Well, reinvest. Figure out a way to market it right. Figure out a way to create a new product, a new service, a new offering. Invest in that. Invest in yourself. Believe in yourself. Know that you've been successful in other aspects of your life. That's what I thought when I started the podcast and I started to turn it into a business as opposed to this side hobby. I didn't have any business believing that I could make this successful. I'd never done it before, but I believed I could. Why? Because I'd done it in other businesses. That's it. I'd had two other successful businesses that I ended up selling and made great money doing it and had a good, fulfilling career out of both of those businesses. If I could do it there, yeah, I could apply the same principles over here. So it's faith in my past performance. That's always been helpful. Temper it. Take off some of the highs, reduce some of the lows, and instead of being all over the place like this, it should be like this. And the more you
Yeah.
can do that, I think the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. That's kind of reminds me of like something I try to remind myself of is like I try not to get too high when things are going great and I try not to get too low when I'm just getting beat up. And for me, I kind of want to ride that even slope, you know? And that way when I do get disappointed, it's not like catastrophic. Or when I do get a huge win, I'm like, well, there's going to be some tribulations coming. Like that's just the ebbs and flows of life. And that's where I see people get in trouble is that when they're going too high, they double down, and then that causes some mental issues when something doesn't flow their way, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the end of the world." Well, no, this is just called life, and it's called business, and I'm learning that every day, which has been a treat.
That's a good way to look at it. Uh, Yeah, look, when things go really, really well, I'm very cautious. I used to be this more, but I'm very cautious now of saying, you're amazing. I'm really not. Like, I got to take some of that off. And look, when things go
Yeah,
horribly, I don't call myself an idiot either. I'm
yeah.
not. I'm intelligent. I'm capable. Like, I know I can do this, but I'm not God's gift to podcasting either. Like,
Mhm.
I realize exactly where I am. And every day I'm taking one step forward, trying to improve. I'm not the best father. I'm not the worst father. Could I be better? Yes. Okay. Take a step. Look at it in any aspect. I'm not the fittest man in the world, but I'm not the most out of shape either. I'm slightly better than average. So can I make myself better? If I have a desire to be the fittest man in the world, sure, let's get after it. I could do that. I know I could do that.
Mhm.
If I'm dedicated, if I'm committed, I'm not to being that. That's not my goal right now. But if I were, yeah, you better believe I could do that. Why? Because I've done everything else I said I was going to do.
Mhm.
So I can rely on that.
Is there anything in your life that in the back of your mind you know that you should be doing that, but you're just putting off? You're not attacking it. I'm putting you on the spot right now,
Mm,
but
yeah, no, I appreciate it. I talked about this a little bit earlier. The spiritual element is something I could definitely improve upon. I have a tendency of being arrogant and like going at it on my own. Maybe it's self righteousness. Maybe it is just arrogance or uh, pride, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to examine that a little bit more. But yeah, that's one area of my life that, you know, church attendance, prayer, reading scripture, things like that, that I could definitely improve upon. Leading my family, my kids from a spiritual perspective. But everything else, I feel like not everything, but I feel like I'm doing what I need to do in other departments. But that is an area of improvement that I definitely could work on for sure.
Yeah. How long have you been sober?
Um, July of last year, 2022. So what's that? 15 months, 14, 15 months, 16 months,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I don't really
Yeah.
track it. You know, a lot of people will track it and they'll say, oh, I'm, you know, 300 days sober
Right.
or whatever. That's fine. If that works for you, that's cool. I don't really track it.
Yeah.
It's just a lifestyle.
Yeah. Can you talk about the troubles that you've had, if any, while getting sober? Because I know a lot of guys. I've interviewed a lot of people who've gotten sober. Last weekend's episode with Taylor Spike, he had an
Uh-huh.
addiction problem, and you know he had ebbs and flows, of course. But I know there's
Taylor's
a lot of
he's
people
the
out here
runner,
that
right?
yeah Cam
Yeah.
he's Cam
Yeah.
Haynes' half brother. Yep. Yeah, big
Oh,
time
I didn't
ultra
know
runner.
that.
Yeah. I didn't really know that until not too long ago either. But
Interesting.
yeah, he's a very elite ultra runner and
Yeah, he's
struggled
incredible.
with alcoholism and yeah, and pills and he went through it for a long time and then, you know, he used running as an outlet
Mm.
which helped him get sober and I know that there's been a lot of people out there who've struggled with drinking or anything like that. Is there any I guess what is there to expect? I guess is my main question when you're like, "Hey, I need to get my shit together." Like how difficult actually is that to lose that vice?
Well, it was hard for me because I was in the midst of a divorce as I was getting sober.
Yeah.
That was hard because I could have escaped with alcoholism and just drank, you know, my sorrows away. I would have had new sorrows, but I would have drank those sorrows away. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the other thing that I didn't experience, a lot of guys will decide to get sober because, and I'm great. I'm really grateful that they decide to get sober before things get bad. Like I wish that for anybody who's listening, make the decision now before it gets bad because it'll just get worse. You're gonna get in an accident. You're gonna kill somebody. You're gonna go to jail. You're gonna go through a divorce. Like something will happen if you keep drinking the way you're drinking right now.
Yeah.
And so and in that moment, look, if you go to jail, you're gonna get sober. Why? Because you're in jail.
Hmm.
Okay, so like,
Yeah.
or you
Now you
can
got two
decide,
problems.
yeah, exactly. Or you can decide I'm going to get sober now because I know it's the right thing to do and I've been wanting to do it for 20 years. And you can make that decision. And for me, I had to go through a divorce and lose half of my wealth, lose 50% of the time with my kids. Like it was rough, man. I didn't have to get to that point, but I let it get to that point and it became so painful that I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the problem. That right there, that drink is the problem. So let's eliminate that. Let's get rid of that." That was a blessing in disguise because I'm not sure I would have had the strength to do it otherwise. And so I commend these guys who just quit cold turkey because they want to. That's powerful. I would say distraction techniques are valuable. And then replace and not distraction is the baseline. If you're thinking, oh, I need to have a drink, just distract yourself for 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour. Do something, make a phone call, go to the gym, go on a walk, get yourself out of the environment that's causing you to want to drink. So distraction is important. But then I would also say replacement is important. And what I mean by that is why is it that you're drinking? What are you trying to escape from? For me, it was just letting things turn off. I couldn't turn anything off. The business was successful. People were demanding my time and attention and energy. It was becoming frustrating. You know, people would text me and I get frustrated because they're texting me. It was just overwhelming. So I started to drink. And that was my escape. Okay, is there a way to do it without drinking? Yeah, there is. I was on a hunt this last weekend with my son. I didn't really have my phone out. I mean, I was playing some games in the stand or whatever when we were playing or watching reels together. But outside of that, I wasn't on social media dinking around, making comments, making posts, doing podcasting. It was an escape.
Yeah.
And we were walking around to find his deer, I think. Or no, I'm sorry. We were pheasant hunting. We were walking around and I was talking with my son. And I said, "Isn't this awesome? And he's like, yeah, this is awesome. I said, what do you like about it? He's like, I don't know. I just like being out here and hanging out and like trying new things. And I said, yeah, that's pretty cool. And he asked me what I like about it. And I said, I don't have a care in the world right now. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
If we see a pheasant, cool. If not, cool. Not thinking about business, not thinking about money, not thinking about your mom, not thinking about the other kids. Like all I'm thinking about right now is this walk in the
Yeah.
woods. This is great. And hunting was a really successful outlet. I feel very much the same with going to the gym. I put some music in, and I only put one earbud in. I don't put both. I put one. So if somebody wants to talk to me, I have an opportunity to talk with somebody or engage with somebody. And I don't have any other cares in the world except for whatever music I'm listening to, whatever person might be talking to me, and whatever rep I'm on right now. That's it. I'm not thinking about business. I'm not thinking about my day. I'm not thinking about trouble with women. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just thinking about what I'm currently engaged in. And that's really powerful. It's helpful.
I love that you said that. And for you, the outlet is hunting and then the gym, but that could be anything for anybody, really. You just have to
Yeah.
explore and find that outlet because like that's pretty much exactly it for me as well. Like when you're hunting, half the time, Ryan, I don't care if I see an elk. I don't care if I see a mule deer. Of course, would I love to harvest one? That's part of the reason that I'm out there.
Yeah.
But I don't have any cell phone service. I'm walking around hiking. I'm glassing. I'm enjoying this beautiful state that I live in. Nothing else matters, man. Nothing else matters. And it's the most freeing feeling that one could have. All your problems are just, you're not going to solve them out there. There's nothing you can do out there. So you might as well enjoy where you're at and be all in on the moment. And for us, I love that you said it's hunting in the gym because that's the exact same thing for me.
It's powerful. I think it is for a lot of guys. And I think if more men got engaged in those things, like there's three things I always advocate for. And I'm not saying you're not a man if you don't do these things. People say that sometimes. I'm not saying that. But there are three things I advocate for men. That is going to the gym, that is hunting, and that is training some form of martial arts. Mine is jujitsu. But if you do those three things, like those are super healthy outlets, and your marriage will improve, the relationship with your kids will improve, your business will improve, your overall satisfaction and fulfillment in life will improve if you implement those three things.
Yeah, and all three of those things are really good ways to humble yourself and
No
check your
doubt.
ego because we all
No
we
doubt.
all have an ego and it's been something, man, that um I've been talking to my wife a lot about recently is that ego thing. And I think your ego is very helpful in some situations, but in other situations I think it can be detrimental to not only yourself but people around you. Do you kind of classify it that way or do you have a different perspective on quote unquote a men's ego?
I don't know if it's ego. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think I agree with what you're saying. We talked about Bert Soren. He was on the podcast last week, and you said he had him on last month.
Yes.
He talked about delusionally passionate is the term he used.
I
Delusionally
like that.
passionate,
Yeah, I like that.
where it's not so much ego. He told Did you listen to the podcast by chance that I did with him?
I've listened to like the first half of it. I didn't finish the whole thing.
I don't know if you got to it or not, but he tells a story of how he became a track athlete and a four-time All-American by accident.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't ego that led him down that path. It was
Yeah.
delusion. He was
Yeah.
passionate about something and he was a little bit delusional about it. And he ended up walking on to the track and field team, making the cut, and then going on to have this incredible college career as a field athlete. So I'm not sure if it's ego or if it's just, hey, I'm a little bit dumb. Like I'm I'm dumb enough to like just keep going. And that's how I feel like I am. There's no ego. Like I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm the best. I
Yeah.
think I'm just dumb enough. Maybe I'm dumb enough to just keep going when I shouldn't, or when other people would like smart people would throw in the towel. I'm dumb enough just to keep going. Maybe that's all it is. I don't know. But what I do know is I like what I do and I feel like I can get better and I'm going to keep doing it. And people say, what's your exit strategy? I don't know. I don't have any exit because I'm not thinking about the exit. I'm
Yeah.
in. I'm
You're in the
not
moment.
thinking about getting out. I'm in it right now.
Yeah.
This is where I
Yeah.
want to be.
Yeah. And I like that. I like that a lot. I think you guys are on to something there. Ryan, I appreciate your time, man. This was amazing.
You
I'm
bet.
glad
Of
we got to do
course.
this, brother.
Yeah, happy to
Um,
do
b-
it.
Before I get you out of here, where can people find you?
Orderofman.com is the website, or the podcast is Order of Man, so you can listen there. And then if you want to connect with me, I'm most active on Instagram, which is at Ryan Michler, and my last name is spelled Michler. So you'll find me. If you hit me a message on Instagram, I'll respond back. I'm usually pretty active and responsive there. So yeah, you guys will find me.
He definitely will. If he responded to me, he'll respond to you.
They have a better chance than you. Is that what you're saying?
No, well, I mean, hey, hopefully. Well, we made it happen, brother. We made it happen. Love that, man. Listen, stay on the line. I'll get you out of here in a sec.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.